Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Need a first canto, please. At least chapter 8, text number 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militandina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Maya Javani Kakshanam Agnad Hoksajamavyayam Nalakshase Muradrisha Nato Natya Dharoyata. We'll just go right to the verse because we're late. This is from Queen Kunti's prayers, which is in the 8th chapter of the 1st canto, and today's verse is 19, which would be the second of her verses. Kunti is directly praying to Krishna here, and these are famous prayers. Prabhupada quoted them frequently and gave commentary and lectures on all of them. Namaste Purusham Tvadyam Ishvaram Prakrite Param Alaksham Sarvabhutaram Antar Bahir Avastitam. And it was the first verse where Kunti declares, is everyone okay? Kunti declares that Namaste Purusham Tvadyam Ishvaram Prakrite Param. You're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm offering my obeisances unto you. And in the second verse, Maya Javane Kachanam. Is that the verse we have?
Yes.
So let's chant it a couple of times together. Maya Javane Kachanam
Maya Javane Kachanam
Agnad Hoksajamavyayam Nalakshase Mudadrisha Nato Natya Dharoyata. 1, 2, 1, 2. And now I'll read the word meanings. Maya, deluding. And if we have somebody standing by to look up words, just in case we need it, best place is online called Etymology, the etymological dictionary. Javanika, curtain. Achanam, covered by. Ugnya, ignorant. Adhoksajam, beyond the range of material conception. Transcendental. Avyayam, irreproachable. Not. Lakshyase, observed. Mudadrisha, by the foolish observer. Nata, artist. Natyadhara, dressed as a player. Yatha, as. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor, covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna affirms that less intelligent persons mistake him to be an ordinary man like us, and thus they deride him. First, Tava avajananti mam mudha manushim tanamashitam param bhav majananto mavabhuta maheshvaram. Any others? Naham prakasha sarvasya ukamaya samavrita mudo yam nabijananti lokamama jamavyayam. Several places in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says that foolish people can't understand him. This is an important aspect of this verse, that if you're not trained or you're belligerently foolish or deliberately ignorant, it's called contrived ignorance or willful ignorance, stubborn ignorance, then it's not possible to understand the Lord. The same is confirmed herein by Queen Kunti. Same as what? What are we comparing? The last sentence, right? Can somebody say? Do we have extra microphone? We may need it. So it says same means comparison to what? Yeah, the last sentence. So the first sentence is, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna affirms that less intelligent persons mistake him to be an ordinary man like us, and thus they deride him. Who derided Krishna? Who? No, specifically who? Shishupal, from the time he was a little baby. As soon as they heard baby talk, what's that? And he was deriding Krishna. Anybody else deride Krishna? Duryodhana derided Krishna. Two more. Who? Mataji? I couldn't hear. Rukmi? How about the character who imitated him? Did you know he got liberation? Handraka said, you're not Vasudeva, I'm the real Vasudeva. So there's lots. Shalva, you can go through all of the belligerent demons, they said bad things about Krishna. And in every case throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, whenever anybody derides Krishna, in their commentaries, the acharyas say, well, he didn't really mean that. And here's why. Because they're so expert with the language that they say, actually, if you emphasize this syllable over that one, they really were trying to pay him a compliment. So in the Gita, Krishna affirms that less intelligent persons mistake him to be an ordinary man like us, and thus they deride him. What does less intelligent mean? Any theories? If somebody doesn't take up devotional service, they're considered less intelligent. Na te vidu swartakatim hi Vishnu.
Those who don't know that Krishna is the ultimate goal of life.
Those who don't know that Krishna is the ultimate goal of life. Four kinds of unintelligent people. They don't surrender for various reasons. You want to give the reasons?
Yeah, the reasons are that they're either lowest among mankind, their knowledge is stolen by illusion, they take up the atheistic nature of demons, or they're grossly foolish.
Yeah, less intelligent. There's plenty of definition of what less intelligent is, and also there are various categories of being less intelligent. And ultimately, not te vidu swartakatim hi Vishnu and what you said, it means that you don't have a goal to surrender to Krishna, then you're less intelligent. And then there are several kinds of intelligent people. Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna arto jignasa artati jnani cha bharatarshava. Krishna says in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there are 4 kinds of sukritinas. Those are, they have some asset, spiritual asset. And therefore, they're inclined to surrender to Krishna, but if they're surrendering to Krishna but they're bad people, we can't accept that, right? True or false? Okay, somebody's scoring big points over here. Somebody's on the ball over here. You want to explain it? Give Shastra, we want to hear Sanskrit.
So Krishna says, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, Amritam Sarvapindu Mokshishami Mahāshvajaha. So Krishna says, just surrender to me, abandon all practice of religion, and I will deliver you from all sinful reactions and not fear. So anyone who surrenders to him is certainly glorious.
But what if they're bad? They're a bad person.
But they're surrendering to Krishna, so Krishna does accept.
Okay, if somebody knows, this is very good, and it's a good foundation. If you know more, please say more.
There is another person.
Yeah. We're going to come back to you, don't worry. Go ahead. Raise your hand high. Really high. It means you're confident. I know. A little louder, like...
Even if someone does a harm activity, they still should be considered safely.
If
This is another question.
they're properly situated in their determination, even if they've blown it, if they keep their same attitude of surrender to Krishna and they continue, then Shripram Bhavati Dharmatma Shashvashanti Nigachati. Krishna says very quickly they'll become saintly. So Krishna counts them in the same category as the saints, even if they have some bad start. Okay, here we go. The same is confirmed herein by Queen Kunti. The less intelligent persons are those who rebel against the authority of the Lord. Such persons are known as asuras. The asuras cannot recognize the Lord's authority. When the Lord himself appears amongst us as Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, or in his original form as Krishna, he performs many wonderful acts which are humanly impossible. Which are what? As we shall find in the 10th canto of this great literature, Lord Sri Krishna exhibited his humanly impossible activities even from the days of his lying on the lap of his mother. He killed the Putana witch, although she smeared her breast with poison just to kill the Lord. The Lord sucked her breast like a natural baby. Like a what?
Natural baby.
And he sucked out her life, her very life also. Similarly, he lifted the Govardhan hill just as a boy picks up a frog's umbrella and stood several days continuously just to give protection to the residents of Vrindavan. These are some of the superhuman activities of the Lord described in the authoritative Vedic literatures like the Puranas, Itihasas, histories, and Upanishads. He has delivered wonderful instructions in the shape of the Bhagavad Gita. He has shown marvelous capacities as a hero, as a householder, as a teacher, and as a renouncer. Marvelous capacities as a hero, a householder, as a teacher, and as a renouncer. Name one time Krishna was a hero.
Saved those kings who were in the cave.
He saved the 240 kings who had been imprisoned by Jarasandha. Put them in a cave and let him sit in there with no nourishment for many, many days. He saved them. He was a great hero. How about Krishna as a householder? Yes?
Welcoming Narada.
Take the mic.
He honored guests, brahmanas like Narada Muni and his Sudha.
But it was, only problem was he had 16,108 palaces and he had to go to each one of them. Hey, wait a minute. That was a lot to maintain, and his wives were lonely because there was only one Krishna, right?
He expanded himself for each of them, so they didn't feel.
So that's pretty good, right? All right. How about as a teacher? whereas Krishna is heroic. Okay, who's got one? Raise your hand high. Yes. Closer.
During the Mahārāja, when he gave the instruction to Arjuna and he got Bhagavad Gita.
You're talking about Bhagavad Gita? When he teaches Bhagavad Gita, it's very heroic, right? Yeah? Okay. And as a renouncer, where was Krishna? As Caitanya Mahāprabhu? Okay. Was Krishna ever a renouncer? Yes.
For Dāsa, Krishna renounces his opulences and just plays like a normal boy.
Plays like a normal boy.
Sometimes he's beaten. Sometimes his friends beat him.
And sometimes his friends beat him and say, you're not very tough. I could take you any day of the week. Okay, we'll take it. He is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by such authoritative personalities as Vyasa, Devala, Asita, Narada, Madhva, Shankara, Ramanuja, Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Bhaktisiddhanta, and all other authorities of the line. He himself has declared as much in many places of the authentic literatures. And yet there is a class of men with demoniac mentality who are always reluctant to accept the Lord as the supreme absolute truth. This is partially due to their poor fund of knowledge and partially due to their stubborn obstinacy, please look up the word, which results from various misdeeds in the past and present. This is a key sentence, so I'm going to read it again. Are you ready? Say yes.
Yes.
This is partially due to their poor fund of knowledge. What does a poor fund of knowledge mean?
I told you.
It means you went to the account and there was nothing in it. Forgot to make any deposits. Had a poor fund of knowledge. I'm sorry, I don't have anything in the account. This is partially due to their poor fund of knowledge and partially due to their stubborn obstinacy. Obstinate means?
Hardness of heart.
We need the etymology too. Go ahead.
Hardness of heart.
Hardness of heart, it says. And how does it come to mean that? I'll give it to...
It's from Medieval Latin obstinatia, resolute, inflexible, stubborn, past, present, participle of obstinatus, persist, to stand stubbornly, to set one's mind on, to stand tranquilly firm.
Okay. You really dug in. Stubborn obstinacy, which results from various misdeeds in the past and present. Such persons could not recognize Lord Sri Krishna even when he was present before them. Another difficulty is that those who depend more on their imperfect senses cannot realize him as the Supreme Lord. Such persons are like the modern scientists. They want to know everything by their experimental knowledge, but it is not possible to know the Supreme Person by imperfect experimental knowledge. He is described herein as a dokshaja, or beyond the range of experimental knowledge. All our senses are imperfect. We claim to observe everything and anything, but we must admit that we can observe things under certain material conditions only, which are also beyond our control. The Lord is beyond the observation of sense perception. Queen Kunti accepts this deficiency of the conditioned soul, especially of the woman class, who are less intelligent. For less intelligent men, there must be such things as temples, mosques, or churches, so that they may begin to recognize the authority of the Lord and hear about him from authorities in such holy places. For less intelligent men, this beginning of spiritual life is essential, and only foolish men decry the establishment of such places of worship, which are required to raise the standard of spiritual attributes for the mass of people. For less intelligent persons, bowing down before the authority of the Lord, as generally done in the temples, mosques, or churches, is as beneficial as it is for the advanced devotees to meditate upon him by active service. I'll read the last one again. For less intelligent persons, bowing down before the authority of the Lord, as generally done in the temples, mosques, or churches, is as beneficial as it is for the advanced devotees to meditate upon him by active service. The fundamental principle of the process of approaching God is to accept that we are helpless. This is a different approach to the empiric scientific way of making a controlled experiment and then making an observation, and based on the observation coming up with an idea of what something is or isn't. And when we accept our frailties, as Kunti will say in subsequent verse, that we should become helpless or understand ourselves to be helpless, and then pray for God's mercy. And as Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyachi mam namaskuru. There's a way in which there's a simple and direct approach to the Lord based on his instruction in the Gita, which is offer obeisances, think of me, offer worship to me. And this is accepting that the Lord is adhoksaja, which means that he can't be understood by the senses. Atashi krishnamadi na bhaved grayam indriye sevamukihi jivado swayam eva spuratyada. This is a helpful verse because it tells us that there's something practical we can do to enact this sense of helplessness, but it's not simply bemoaning the fact that we can't see God, but the Padma Purana rather says, engage your tongue in service. And if you engage your tongue in service to the Lord as the first line of action, then there will come a time that the Lord will reveal himself to you. There are various levels of devotees, and Prahlad Maharaj says in his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev, Naisham para varamatir bhavato nanusaj jantor yata asurido jagatastatapi samsevaya suratayor evate prasada sevanu rupam udayona para varatvam. In this verse, Prahlad Maharaj says, Naisham para varamatir bhavato nanusyaj. That I think you don't consider the higher or the lower. Doesn't matter what position one's in. Krishna doesn't see higher or lower. And then he says, Naisha paravarapatir bhavato nanusya jantor yatat masurido jagatas tatapi. That the Lord is equally disposed to all types of people, but sevanu rupan udayona paravaratvam, based on their mood of service towards him, he, like a desire tree that doesn't consider who's fit or unfit, it simply does the desire tree, rewards the person. If you sit under a desire tree and you say, please let an anvil fall upon my head, and an anvil falls upon your head, is it the fault of the desire tree, or is it your fault? Do you accept responsibility for an anvil falling on your head? And if you ask for something high-minded, like, please engage me in your service, I only want service from you, as Prahlad Maharaj did when he was praying to the Lord, he said, I don't want anything except service to your servants. Even when Krishna offered him something, he said, I'm not interested. And the Lord said, yeah, but on Bhagavan I offer things, so take something. And then he said, please benefit my father. He said, already done. That's done automatically. And then, now take something else. And, well, if you give me anything, just give me the condition of heart where I don't want anything except for service to your lotus feet. That's the side of the spectrum where Sevanurupam Udayurna Bharara, if one is in that category of servant, Sevanurupam, I mean that's the form of your service, is that you don't want anything except service to the Lord. Counterintuitively to those who have a vested interest in sense gratification in the material world, that seems like you're going to miss out on everything, but actually everything comes to the person who's situated in that attitude of selfless service. And to the degree that one is in that mood of service, to that degree, no matter what material condition one is in at the present time, Krishna will reveal himself proportionately. An example that I very much appreciate is Mahārāja Pratāparudra, who, although a king, and although Caitanya Mahāprabhu had said, I don't want to see a king, as he was a sannyasi, kings are an abomination in the eyes of a sannyasi in the sense that they represent material desire and power, attachment to the material world. But Mahārāja Pratāparudra said, I don't want anything else except service to Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu, and if I can't at least come before him and express my devotion to him, then I will give up my kingdom. What's more, I would give up my life. And Prabhupada comments that that sense of do or die, I only want this, was his first qualification for Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu giving him his mercy. Second was that he went before Lord Jagannath and he picked up a broom, which was very unusual for a king, because those who would sweep the ground of the street were considered untouchable at that time. So the king said, I'm not a king. Naham bipro nacha nara patir napi vaisho nashudro naham varni nacha gre patir no banasko yatirva kintu prodnyan nikila paramananda purnamritabdir gopi bharti parakamali or Dāsa and Dāsa, which incidentally is one of the verses we say before we approach the Lord in deity worship, to clear our senses of any misconception that I am something other than a servant of the Lord. And his mood was Prataparudra's, that I'm a humble servant of the servant, therefore I'll sweep the street. And when Caitanya Mahaprabhu heard from his devotees, particularly Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy, that Prataparudra Maharaj was a good devotee, he had given Ramananda Roy a pension. Ramananda Roy said, I want to leave my governorship under you and join Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and just hear and chant. And Prataparudra Maharaj said, granted, with full pay. Same pay, take the rest of your life off. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told that to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, yeah, but a king. And then Ramananda Roy told that to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya also mentioned that king doesn't want to live anymore or have his kingdom if he can't see you. He made seemingly realistic threats that he would just walk away from the whole thing. Put an ivory earring in his ear, meaning that he was some kind of renunciate, just walk away if he couldn't have Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's audience. Prataparudra Maharaj was one of the fortunate souls who was able to see during the dancing at Rath Yatra that Caitanya Mahaprabhu had entered into each kirtan group simultaneously. Others apparently couldn't see it, but he was able to have that vision because he had approached the Lord with the right mood. So the Lord's covered, Maya Javani Kashchanam, Agnad Hoksajamavyayam, to those who are of the various categories of ignorant people. They're obstinate, stubbornly against the idea of God because of poor fund of knowledge and because of a lack of pious activities. And then there are those who are fortunate. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanva mohonirmukta bhajantimam dhridavrta. Somehow, by good fortune, association with devotees, they've developed a desire to serve the Lord, and they feel that there's nothing greater than that. Bahunam jamanamante gyanavam mam prapadyute vasudeva sarvaniti sa mahatma sadurlabha. This is our great fortune if we can have a sense of our own sincerity. There's a way that if we can identify that within ourselves, I only want Krishna. Even though my life may be hectic or seemingly out of balance, or I may feel overwhelmed 99% of the time by my circumstances. If I can identify within myself, I only want Krishna. I only want to serve Krishna. And I don't really care for anything else. It's a great solace, isn't it? You can say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great solace. And this is the main qualification for advancing Krishna consciousness. If we really want Krishna, then Krishna really wants us already. He's open to the relationship. He's just waiting for us to make some kind of a declaration. Sakradeva prapano yas tabasmiti yat charachite. Ramachandra once said famously that if someone says one time, I'm for you, I only like you actually, then he says, okay, I only like you too. He's just waiting for that, but he's equitably disposed to every living entity because he doesn't want to interfere in the independence and then have it tainted by a sense of, oh, I made him do it. But from our side, if we can become well informed about what's important to the Lord, thinking of Prahlāda Maharaj, before he offered prayers, he thought, I'm unqualified. Manyedana bijana rupa tapasutau just teja pravava palapadu shapudi yoga. Naradanai bhavanti parasya pungso bhaktyatu tosha bhagavan gajayutapaya. He had been pushed into giving class in front of all the demigods and in front of the Lord himself. You give class. And he said, everybody else, they have all these ornaments. They're wealthy, they're beautiful, they know Sanskrit and all this kind of stuff. He said, but then he thought, Bhaktyatu Tosha Bhagavan Gajayutapaya, he thought of Gajendra. He said, well, he was just an animal. I mean, what kind of prayers did he sing in an elephant voice? But he said, Bhaktyatu Tosha, he pleased the Lord because he has a sincere desire. And then I think that there are a lot of people who have status. And then we talk about status, one person in the idea of I'm my body. Some person has a higher status, some person has a lower status. You get this in all cultures because human beings categorize, sometimes for practical purposes, others, and most often and chronically because we're envious of others and we want to suppress, and I want to be in charge. It happens in political systems, it happens in religious systems. Those who have been given, bequeathed some responsibility to lead others, then they think, well, maybe that means I'm God, or I'm the only one who knows God. So Prahlāda Maharaj is against this also. He says, Vipradvishad gunayitara ravindanabha parara vindabhukachva pacham varishnam manyetadarpachanam manovachanehitarta pranam punati sakalamna tabudimanaha. He said, those people with a high position in a religious society who think that I know everything and everybody else, they should come to me and I'll teach them. But they don't have that devotion for the Lord that Gajendra had. He said, I don't think that you like that very much. And I don't think they can actually help anybody without that sincere feeling in their heart. But they can't even help themselves. What to speak of their families? What to speak of the greater society if they have that defect that I think I'm great. I'm the big teacher. Everybody has to come to me to learn. And other people are not so important. The great person, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Ramanega Vihastini, Shuni Chaiva Shapakecha, Pandita Samadarshina. That's the educated person who knows how to show respect to life. Not something dead, not skin and bones, not the position itself, but to the life, the consciousness within, as it all emanates from Krishna. And one who can recognize that there are levels of consciousness that are especially noteworthy. Rupa Goswami says, learn how to appreciate those who have developed their consciousness. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshastik chet pranati bishta bhajantamisham shushushaya bhajana vignamananyamanya nindari shunya hridamipsita sangalabhya. That if you see anyone or hear anyone say Hare Krishna, if you've ever been surprised of Hare Krishna coming out from someone, like once I was at Santa Cruz, California, the home of the homeless vegan, and I was standing behind my little book table there, and a snaggletooth, disheveled, hadn't slept in a bed for the last 6 years, 60 maybe, person walked up to the table and wild-eyed was staring at me and the books, or more at the books, and I said, anything? And he said, Janmad yasa yata yutam, and he quoted the whole first verse of the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and before I could get a word in edgewise, he turned around and walked into the crowd and never came back. And Rupa Goswami says, if you hear from the mouth of somebody Hare Krishna, what to speak of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasa Yaton Bhayadi Taratash Charte Svabhigna Sorat, then you should recognize there's something there that's so valuable, you should, in your mind, offer respect. He said, if someone dikshasti chet pranati bish, they've taken a vow that I'm going to do this, chanting Hare Krishna, you should take time, when they're not looking, bow down to them. And then, if you find somebody who's become free from the propensity to criticize others, which is impossible to do, unless you've had a change of heart, then you should try to get that person's association. So the point is, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, recognize what the real principle is. And that is that somebody has sincere desire to serve the Lord. It comes about only by some benediction of good association, some lifetime with some great soul or souls. And meanwhile, last point before we take any questions or reflections, should also know that it's a worthwhile occupation to give others the opportunity to develop such qualifications. I just think in terms of the meeting of Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati, that although Mahaprabhu was there in a city full of Mayavadis who from behind the scenes were criticizing him because he was going out on Sankirtan every day with his followers, staying at Chandrasekhar's house, and they were holding classes and saying, who does this person think he is? He's not a real sannyasi. He's not one of us. He's a sentimentalist. And some of the devotees of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu were very pained by this. So one of them had arranged a meeting between Caitanya Mahaprabhu and the Mayavadis. Actually, Mahaprabhu arranged it, but it came through the agency of this Brahmana who was there, who then had invited Mahaprabhu to come and meet Prakashananda and all the Mayavadis, and Mahaprabhu slightly smiled. And he went there, and he sat down in a lowly place. You know this? You remember? Of course you do. Mahaprabhu went to meet all these Mayavadis, and when he came in, there was an assemblage of Mayavadis, and Mahaprabhu, everyone, they would wash their feet at the door before they come in. So there was a place that was considered forbidden territory because it was not the cleanest place. It was in a lower situation, lower place in the room. So when Mahaprabhu came in, washed his feet, and then he sat down in that lowly place. And that's the first thing that attracted the Mayavadis headed by Prakashananda. Second was that he was effulgent. Of course, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hiranmayena Patrena Satyasya Pihitam Mukam. His effulgence precedes him. But devotees in general are effulgent. People notice their countenances because they live a pure life. They look different from other people. Like, what are you on? And they noticed that about Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prakashananda came over and he extended his hand and said, no, please come sit with us. And Prabhupada mentions that he got Prakashananda great benefit from doing this. It was his heartfelt, it was spontaneous. It was because Mahaprabhu had approached in a certain mood, a humble mood. Sometimes we think of how to preach to others. Somebody pointed out the other day, well, you can try the way that Caitanya Mahaprabhu preached to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. What was that? He didn't say anything. Have you ever tried that? You sit down, the other person's got so many things to tell you, and you just don't mention anything until a week later they say, did you hear any of that? It's like, oh yeah, I heard it all. Like, you have any comments? Was it good? Some of it was. Some of it? What do you mean some of it? Not all of it? No. That was Mahaprabhu's approach with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and with Prakashananda Saraswati. He just came in and sat down in the lowest place in the room. I've seen it with advanced devotees, the kind Nindari Shunya Hridimapsita Sangalavya. They'll enter an assembly and they're very humble. And Prabhupada, when he came and he was taking disciples, he said, no, I'm your servant. He stood in line famously at 26 2nd Avenue because although sincere and eager, the young followers, his young followers that he had gathered by singing in the park and then holding open class, they didn't know how to treat a saintly person, except calling him Swamiji. But then, as far as waiting for the bathroom, I'll say, oh, you're waiting too, huh? Or cleaning up after the feasts that Prabhupada cooked, and it's like, they didn't think of some of those things. But Prabhupada was very gentle. He didn't even tell the first initiates that they had to follow any principles until an hour later. Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshaya. Somehow or other, first get people involved, and then later on you can introduce a few ideas that might be helpful to tighten things up. But don't make it too tight, that you'll spoil the whole program. So just remember, Mahaprabhu came in, sat down in a lowly place, and then Prakashananda took him by the hand, seated him amongst the others in an exalted position, And even then Mahaprabhu didn't say anything until they said, well, how come you don't study the Vedas? And he said, well, I know something about the Vedic literature. In a humble way. He didn't come in firing. And they said, really? They were surprised because they thought he was just a dancer, a singer, a sannyasi in name only. And then he said, yeah, I know a little something. It's a good way to come in. And he said, what is it? And then he told them the context of the Vedic literature, of Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana, and that there's a personality of Godhead, and so forth. So, we can't approach, final statement, we can't approach Krishna without this sense of sincerity and humility. And if we keep that in all our activities, that's the active ingredient that will allow us a success. Om Tat Sat. Now we'll take some reflections or questions. I think I have a few more minutes, right? Or is it over like half an hour ago? I'm not sure of the schedule.
Usually at 30 it's over.
Oh, okay.
See why not do
Well,
it.
let's take 2 questions. And I'll take like half an hour to answer each. No, I'm just kidding.
So I am trying to understand an apparent contradiction. So I think the verse you quoted from the Gita, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose karmic reactions are destroyed, engage in my service with determination. And that makes it sound like bhakti is subject to piety and sin. And I'm thinking of Prabhupada saying that you can only approach Krishna sincerely with feeling if you are materially exhausted and free from all these material opulences, which are a result of pious activity. I'm just trying to understand how bhakti is transcendental to material energy, and yet it sounds like if I'm born in an uneducated situation or something, according to that verse in the Gita, I won't be able to engage in Krishna service with determination because I've got all these karmic reactions. Does that make sense?
Yep. And one way to justify that is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's comments on Sukriti, as given by Srila Prabhupada in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, where he describes how as we're calling it spiritual wealth, somebody has a poor fund of knowledge, there's a sense of some kind of spiritual asset that comes up in this idea of Sukriti. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te tvanva mohanir mukta vachanti mam dridavata. Quoting the Bhagavad Gita from the 7th chapter, 28th verse? No, 27th. That only those who have this, what's saying, they've cleared away the obstacles of pap, sin, and also they don't have an inclination towards it, and also they have some sukriti. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there's categories of sukriti, and the topmost among them is bhakti unmukhi sukriti, he said. This is a kind of sukriti. Have we ever tried what is sukriti anyway? We think of it as a substance or what? It's something gained very similar to what Prabhupada talks about when he talks about the Bhakti Lata Bij. In talking about the Bhakti Lata Bij, using that metaphor of the gardener and the seed, he says in his purport that those who are unfortunate, they get a Gyan Bij or a Karma Bij. And it's a conception of what's important in life. What's the ultimate goal of life? And similarly, there are different kinds of sukriti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there's sukriti that qualifies one for pursuing impersonal liberation. There's sukriti that qualifies one for being a great jnani. There are a lot of great jnanis. You're a great jnani. can figure stuff out, look at the universe and say, not this, not that. But then there's another kind of qualification called bhakti unmukhi sukriti, which is really what's indicated in the famous verse from Agasura, itam satam brahma sakana bhutya dasyam gatanam paradaivatena mayashitanam naradarakena sakamvrija rukrita punya punja. He's talking about the cowherd boys. They're playing with Krishna. He said, how did they get that? He said, krita punya punja. They got all this special kind of punya. And it doesn't mean digging wells and growing trees. But it refers, according to Rupa Goswami, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, to association with those who have bhakti. And if one gets that kind of association, even if one is apparently in a disadvantaged situation as far as regular punya goes, that is the real asset. How can we prove that further? Mentioned by Rupa Goswami that these 26 qualities of a pure devotee. One of them is that you have this sense, as I mentioned in the beginning, that I only want Krishna. That Krishna Bhakti is good. If you're lacking all the other 25, he says, you're still in the game. Because Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvar gunas tattva samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorati nasati davato bihi. If you have that one qualification, you're sincere about Krishna, which you get from being in association of pure devotees. You can get that. That's bhakti unmukhi sukriti. And that's easier to prove. That's the main, it can be proved by those types of references I'm giving. But that's what's really being talked about. Nonetheless, Krishna himself in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam dedicates a whole chapter to the three modes of material nature and says it's worthwhile to cultivate sattva. Because sattvam yad brahmadarshanam, right? Sattvam yad brahmadarshanim, because from sattva it's much easier to see who you are. You can see I'm Brahman, I'm not. And that applies also. But still the more important aspect of Sukriti is that you've gotten a sense that Krishna is cool and devotees are nice. As oftentimes we look back to devotees who were so simple and were engaged in manual labor. Jayananda Prabhu, who I had the fortune of knowing because I joined the temple right when he was there, while he was there, and he's a good example of that. You couldn't tell that he wasn't, no, he was everything, but most of the time he was doing manual service and he would invite people off the street to come and help him. And by his association that service is nice, prasadam's nice, flowers are nice, everything's nice, people would get a sense that, oh, I like this guy. That's a kind of entrance into devotional service. You don't know who he is. Some people say there is no Gyata Sukriti, but there is some entry point into that realm where you started with no qualification, but you got the goodwill of somebody who's doing devotional service and who invited you to come in, and you like them, and then you start thinking like, this isn't half bad. And the next thing you know, Hare Krishna. So anyway, that's why we do what we do. That's why you do what you do. You're making people fortunate. It's another point I wanted to make really quick, which is just if you're untrained, if your eyes aren't trained, Krishna gives a section in the 15th chapter dedicated to this. Shariram yaravapnoti yat yukramatishvara grihit vaitani samyati vayara gandami vashaya shotram chakshus parshanam cha rasanam granam evacha adishtainam mayas manaschayam Vishayanupasevate Ukramantam stitam vapi bhunjanan bhagavan vitam vimudha narapashyanti pashyanti gyanachakshusha yatanto yoginas chainam, etc. There's 4 verses there where Krishna is just talking about the mechanics of leaving your body, and he mentions there that the foolish can't understand what's happening, but those whose eyes are trained in knowledge, they can see what's happening. So when people have a little inclination towards devotional service and then they come into a training program, it's like I was noticing, on your screen that you have set up, then it has the word for word. You can get trained in a proper program, and then there's a kind of dridavata from that also, because you know what you're doing. It's not based on nimagraha, just doing it because everyone else is. Last question. Or comment. 5, 4, 3, yes. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, my question is, the beginning of every Sukriti is a Gyat Sukriti. Like it is said that no one can walk into the temple of Krishna unless Krishna gives permission. He's Drashtanam. So when someone just walks in here, is the beginning always a Gyat?
Well, Shishupal was against Krishna, and there's some indication from our acharyas that just before he got his head cut off, it must have been a nanosecond, because the chakra is so fast. He thought, Krishna's kind of beautiful. Snap. I can't find one in Putana. That's why Uddhava going, what? What'd you do here? But there generally is a point at which someone has some kind of appreciation that, wow, Krishna's cool, or he's beautiful, or something, that recognition. And there's also, Prabhupada indicated that, and the Shastra says, Yanamadeha Shravananu, Yanamadeha Twamanadarapi Managudiritam Niki Logra Tapa Patalimba Lumpa Seeds. It's from Namashtika. Rupa Goswami says, if someone neglectfully says, if someone neglectfully says, or derisively says, you Hare Krishnas are bad people, you go away. They wouldn't say it like that. I've heard other versions. And Prabhupada said, at least they said Hare Krishna. So they got some sense. So it's hard to say, because who knows who's had what kind of association and when, and how it all comes together. It's mentioned in Jiva Goswami's Sandarbha's story of a great wealthy man who's walking along the street, and then he hears the mother call child. Says, time to come home. Child's out playing. Said, time to come home. And he's walking by at the same time. And suddenly, whatever experiences he's had previously with bhakti, he's fully focused on his business, as business people are. It's the main thing. Let's keep the main thing the main thing. Got to make money. And then one day he hears, it's time to come home. It's random. And he thought, yeah, I'm supposed to go back to Godhead now. Lal Babu, the temple's there in Gopinath Bazaar in Vrindavan. He built it by going door to door. After being a wealthy industrialist, he said, forget this, I'm going back to Godhead. And he humbled himself by begging rupees door to door so he could build a temple for Krishna. Prabhupada mentions him in the Nectar Devotion. Lal Babu. So, who knows what accumulation a soul has? And that's why it's an interesting prospect to go out to the GTA and poke around. We went to Eglinton because it looked like a perfect place for Sankirtan. It still does. And Aruna Keshari was reminding me, I said when we left from our Sankirtan outing last year, whenever it was, I was saying, these people are salt of the earth. Because we just went door to door and next thing we know, they were ready to buy Bhagavad Gita. How do I know how that happened? It's really hard to tell, isn't it? It's kind of a mystery. So the sojourn of the soul in the material world and how he picks up some association, when and where, we don't know. But one thing we do know is that the holy name is potent, and then if you give it out to people, we have that experience, not just faith, but we've seen so many people who said, Hare Krishna, go to hell, get out of here. And the next thing, Hare Krishna. Hey Bob, what happened to you? My name's not Bob anymore. It's kind of a mystery. And also, almost bombastically, Prabodhananda Saraswati is saying, watch out, here comes Lord Caitanya. All bets are off, because he's just giving it out to everybody, and it's special, because the holy name is going everywhere, every part of the world, and enters people's hearts and minds imbued with that conception of surrender to Krishna. So it's very powerful. Hard to say, and so I won't say more. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking us later. I didn't know the schedule. I'm Agnad Hoksajam. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu, Shri Gauritai, Shri Gauritai, Shri Gauritai, Shri Radhakir Chor Gopinath, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. If you so desire, please empower us to be sincere and to really want Krishna consciousness more than anything. And please give us the enthusiasm to go to every door in the GTA and give everyone a chance to say Hare Krishna, take a Krishna literature, and come back to the Bhakti Academy and Hare Krishna. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna.